Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call to order this work session of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. Today is Monday, September 30th, 2019. I am Tom Donnelly. I am the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners this year, joined by John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1, Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2. This is our weekly work session with our land use and planning folks, community planning, infrastructure, and resources division here at the county. We have a number of items on the agenda today. For folks who might be listening in at home, Matt, I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, to put a voice with a name. So why don't you start?
Yes, this is Matt Lafferty, and I'm the principal planner for long-range planning in Larimer County.
Leslie.
Leslie Ellis, Community Development Director.
Eric.
Eric Freed, Chief Building Official.
Very good. So who'd like to begin?
So we have a couple items, as you noted, on the agenda, and actually the first two items are both Matt, and they both relate to the land use code. And under Director Updates, Eric Freed is going to give you a brief update on the electrical inspectors meeting and the next steps related to that, and notifying the state. So if you don't mind, we'll just go ahead and turn it over to him first, because that would be very brief.
Okay.
I just wanted to circle back quickly. As you know, we've been looking at assuming responsibility for electrical permitting and inspections. And one concern I had from the Board of Commissioners was to make sure we had robust public engagement and talk to our stakeholders. So I just wanted you to know that last Tuesday we had a open house meeting, invited all the electrical contractors through the state of Colorado for whom we had email addresses, all the contractors on our list. About 15 people showed up, which is good. If there was a lot of concern, more people would have showed up. We had electrical contractors, general contractors, solar contractors, and all of them thought it was a good idea for us to move ahead in this regard. In fact, some thought, why haven't you guys done this already? The concerns we did hear expressed more had to do with how we do the program, making sure it's better and not worse for them, that we don't require plans where they're not necessary, that we only require them for the right kind of permits, that we could get inspections done in a timely manner. Some of the contractors say that we should hire 3 inspectors instead of 2. When we run the numbers, we need more than 2 but less than 3, so we're trying to figure out exactly how to make that work. But I asked point blank, and everyone said, no, you guys should go ahead and do this. So I am informing the state today that we are going to assume responsibility as of next July 1st, unless I hear a very loud, no, don't do it from you guys. So we're going to go ahead. I just wanted to let you know that that's what's going to happen.
Good. Any questions, comments? John?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Eric. I just appreciate, once again, the due diligence. This is an issue that was brought to, Commissioner Gator's attention, my attention when I was in the legislature. There were a lot of problems with the state electrical inspector. We looked at a variety of options. And then, of course, regarding the limits on the inspection fees, we're able to work with the legislature to find a compromise, and that allowed us more flexibility to recover some of the costs if we were to choose to take this on. So I think this will help local businesses, folks who want to work with electrical contractors to get their wiring done, and it'll do it in a much more efficient manner. So I think well done.
And Eric, can you remind me what's the ability of fees, our fee setting ability under that legislation?
What they did is they said you could have a base fee for electrical inspections not to exceed $120, and then above a certain base you could have tiered rates that go up. But the big change is that the state, other than that overall cap, the state has no control over local fees. So if the state in the middle of the year needs to lower their fees because of budgetary constraints, it would have no effect on our fees. And as we've looked at it, we've decided we're just going to include electrical in our existing fee structure rather than have a whole separate permit and fee system for electrical. It'll fit within the adopted fee table you already have. We checked with the state, and that's fine. That does not exceed their limitations. But when the state changes their fees, it will have no effect on ours.
And the 120, is that adjusted for inflation?
Yeah, it's supposed to be adjusted for inflation by the CPI every year.
And I think you told us this, but I can't remember. That fee structure will allow us to recuperate the costs of providing the service?
That's what I believe. We'll have to evaluate it over the first year and see how much time we actually did spend on electrical, and if we need to adjust fees. We could come back later and have a separate fee schedule for electrical if we need to, but I believe it'll be cost neutral.
Okay, thank you. I'm fine.
So in the event that it's not, you can turn the inspection program back over to the state?
We could, but I don't think we probably wouldn't want to do that. That would be pretty disruptive to customers. I mean, we have that ability. We could tell them by next October 1st we're doing it, but then we would be jerking customers around between us and the state. So our intention would be to make it work as a county program.
And would a home builder or contractor or electrician have the ability to ask for the state to perform the inspection, or if the county assumes this jurisdictionally, are we the only option?
It would be us, yeah, it's either us or the state. The only exception is for school construction is still under state jurisdiction.
Okay. And then, do the inspectors have to be licensed journeyman electricians?
We'd hire only someone who's licensed either as a journeyman or master electrician.
Okay. They have, but that a requirement?
Yeah, you can have a residential wireman, which is a lower class, look at 1, 2, 3, 4 family homes, but I wouldn't intend to hire one of those because they'd be limited in what they could do.
Okay. All right. Well, any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
What's next?
Thanks. Matt Lafferty again, Community Development Department. We're here today just to talk a couple things about the Land Use Code 2020, the project that's getting ready to really kick off. We're in the middle of doing our code assessment right now. Our consultants have done stakeholder interviews and met with a lot of people in our community that we set up interviews for, met with our technical staff, which is basically all our staff, engineering, health department, and others, and is currently doing a draft assessment on what should be updated in the code and how we should approach rewriting the code so that we can finish at least with the first part of this code by the end of 2020. Based upon that timeline, it's a pretty rapid timeline. It usually takes 2 to 2.5 years to rewrite a code, and we're trying to get the first portion of this done by the end of 2020. And so we need to stay on track. I've been looking at your guys' calendars for the last couple of days with Brenda Jemison. And for our first meeting time, which if you look on this kind of spreadsheet looking layout, you'll see that we're scheduling you to meet on the 19th of December. My preference was to have you sit with the Planning Commission at a work session because it's good for the Planning Commission to hear your direction and your objectives, and vice versa, to hear the comments that are coming out of the Planning Commission in that. But because of schedules this year, it's really hard to fit that time frame. And so I'd ask that I'm going to have it put on your calendars, and I'd ask that you all three commit. This is going to be a standing meeting just between us and the consultants and you three. And so it's really an important meeting to have all three of you there to keep us on track, because this draft assessment is going to lay out what the next 9 months to a year look like and how we're going to get through that. In addition to what we have here. The task 3 on that sheet, which shows installment 1, 2, and 3, are basically main efforts that are going to carry us through next year. And you can see when there's going to be public drafts that are put out at each point during the year. And then there's going to be, for instance, the week of 3/9, the week of 5/25. Those are times that we're going to be meeting with you and the Planning Commission as well as our advisory board and whatnot. And we would like to have those dates on your calendar. We'll set up specific dates, preferably work session nights. And again, we'll have them identified clearly so that you guys can make a commitment to be there. And I know you guys are busy, and I know night meetings aren't much fun, but if we're going to get this done in a timely manner, we just got to maintain a cycle of getting this done. So I wanted to put that out. Is there any comments that you guys might have on that?
Who's the consultant? Is it the same one?
It's Clarion and Associates out of the Denver area.
Okay.
They're more in tune to writing codes than our consultants
Okay,
that worked
on
on
the
the comp plan.
So
Very
you
qualified.
couldn't schedule the Planning Commission for these 3-week meetings, is that what you were saying?
The 12/19 meeting will probably be a Monday evening meeting. I could try to get the Planning Commission for that first meeting on 12/19.
But when we sit down with
The other ones will be all scheduled together.
Sounds like it's
when we sit down with the consultants, that's not joint with the Planning Commission, right?
Only
The
this
rest of
first one. Only this first
Okay.
meeting. The rest of them I will have set up that you're with the Planning Commission.
Oh, is it just the first one is alone?
Yes,
Okay.
just
Oh, okay.
the 12/19 and
Okay,
12/4.
I gotcha.
the holiday season
I understand.
scheduling problem.
Yeah.
The holiday season and all you guys'
Yes.
schedules are pretty solid, so
Okay.
squeezing it on there, that was the best I could do at this point. And we really need to stay on track in December.
So there's phases, 3 phases to this?
Yep.
Is that, you're
So we'll
going to do
look
this in
at
3
zoning
pieces?
districts and uses.
Okay, so that will be adopted first?
It won't be adopted, but we'll go through the process
Okay.
of
And
working
prepare it.
on that and getting a draft and, having public outreach and community outreach and talking to all you guys about what that looks like. And then when that seems to wrap up, we'll move into development and design standards, and then we'll move
Okay.
into administration and procedures.
That seems logical to me.
What's left over comes under task 5, which is that draft land use code batch 2. So there might be things like, right now, our mobile home regulations, our RV park regulations are out there. Might need some work. There might be the sign code regulations. Some of those things might need to be brought up to speed, and that will be what happens in the phase 2, but that will come after 2020.
Okay.
Okay? Yes, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Matt. So when we are provided with draft copies of the proposed land use code language, will it be easy, or how will we be able to look at that language and see how it comports with the comp plan and, the different areas that we've identified as priority areas, the frameworks, the 6 issue areas, the policies and principles? Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah. I haven't seen yet, but that's a great question to ask during this draft assessment time, is how we're going to be able to look and compare those things. But the whole intent of this process is to align our code with our comprehensive plan.
Sure.
It may be that we identify new zone districts, it may be that we don't, and it's to look at that, that relationship and then compare it against our current regulations.
And I'll just add into, this is Leslie, that's a big part of what the assessment does, is it looks at the plan and then identifies areas in our current code where there are gaps, and then it basically lays out the roadmap and an outline of what needs to be done in the work ahead, so that then in these later installments, as they're coming back, then you can check back against the assessment too.
And just a follow-up question. I presume that suggests that the work that will be done to tie it back to the comp plan, that the consultants are also looking at the appendix of the comp plan, which lists specific strategies to see where some of those might be integrated into some of this land use code stuff. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Any other questions on the scheduling? Because I'm going to finalize this, and I don't mean it in any derogatory sense, but having the 3 of you there together and having these discussions with our planning commissions is going to be vital next year, because without that, once we get to the hearing stage, what you said would be too late if we get to the end and have to amend everything in November or December of next year. It would be just really.
And regarding the proposed December 4th meeting where it says PC, that means that this is intended to be just with the Planning Commission, not a joint session, because I think that conflicts with the CCI Winter Conference, and then I think at least I will be going to the Colorado Health Institute Health Conference the next day or so.
And that's why I had to schedule you guys on the 19th.
Very good.
Otherwise, it would have been a joint meeting.
Very good.
So
Can I
you're
make a-
still, if you're in town, or if you want to, you can still attend the 4th. That would be fine.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of the 19th will be set aside for you 3 and us to update you on that. Okay?
Can I make a comment, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Matt, for doing this. I pushed on you really hard to bring this before the commissioners, and that's just me trying to be conscious of the use of staff time, because knowing that we have term-limited commissioners, if we don't make really good progress and 2 unfamiliar commissioners join us, it's going to more than likely lead to a lot of do-over of staff time. And so that's why I pushed Matt so hard to map out the schedule, get things on your calendars now. But that's only going to be the time saver if we're able to respect this schedule. And so I appreciate you, Matt, for mapping it out and bringing it to us and getting it onto calendars in a timely manner. I think that'll help us.
Thanks, and thanks for your advice on that. The second thing I'll draw your attention to is this form here. This is our engagement plan, and I really think this is important for the next part of our conversation. So you have this in front of you. It shows you that we have an approach that we're going to take about engaging our community over the next year and how that might look and the messages that we're going to translate. Why I put this in front of you is because I'm still at a point, we talked several weeks ago about having a potential advisory committee, and that advisory committee, which is on this third page of paper, has not been finalized, and I need to get it finalized so that I can have a meeting with them, let them know what our objectives and direction are, and then have them prepared so that when this draft assessment comes out, they're prepared to put their eyes on that with us and help make some opinions on that. So I've listed 14 individuals here. I heard you, Commissioner Kafalis, on your issue of trying to make it as diverse and unbiased as possible. It's a very difficult task to find some people like that.
Matt, I don't see any people that are necessarily Greek on this
No,
advisory committee.
no, I've got one of those guys on.
That's because we got to stick to the
He's
schedule.
on the Board of County Commissioners. I got you. Yeah, I got that guy. So out of those 14, I really don't want to have a big advisory board. It's hard to manage and keep people on track. And we're trying to, because codes are technical, they're not policy anymore. We've already solved the policy problems. This is very high-level technical issues. I put people that I thought would be most beneficial to this. Number 1 through 5 are all planning commissioners. And I would like to narrow this list down to 10. And so I would suggest out of those planning commissioners that we narrow that down to 2, at best 3. Items.
You come up with this many, did they raise their hands, or?
They volunteered that they
We'd
might
have to
be
catch some of
interested.
them.
The items 6 and 9, I meant to group them, 6 and 7, sorry about that. Christopher Wood and Michael Jones are both from the Environmental Advisory Board and bring various opportunities for us. So we may want to have both of them on. We may want to only have one of them on, and they may supplement each other because of that. Items 7 and 8 are both architects. Steve Steinbecker's an architect, works a lot with Bob Dane, Hearts and Horses, did a lot of work down South Loveland. Rebecca Spears is also an architect. She's done a lot of work for the Graves family up at Noosa and a lot of that stuff. And so they're pretty well respected architects within our community. And so I would suggest that we select one of those. 10 through 14, unless you have a reason for not having those folks on there, they represent certain aspects of our community. And if I'm missing some aspect of the community, I'd like to talk about that, because under that, I'd like to point out that there's other participants that will be entering into this process through public outreach and other things. And so these people at the bottom of the list are all the groups that we're going to go out and we're going to approach anyways as we go through this. And I think that the final bullet item, which is special interest groups, especially those that are underrepresented, we will try to find time to meet specifically with those groups, isolate them, and have actual conversations with them. And we've had some very preliminary discussions with the PAFC, the Partners for an Age-Friendly Community. And they're looking to work with the county in the capacity of being regional facilitators. They took that from our comp plan, and they've suggested that maybe we engage them to help us with some public outreach, especially for those harder to reach communities. And so we might propose in the not too distant future that we utilize them as a supplement to that group, to reach those groups. So
Why did you say 10?
opposed to 14 or 15? Why
It's just easier to manage 10 people than it is 15.
Schedule's
Like the
fine.
task force for oil and gas right now, it just gets pretty big and whatnot. We want these people to stay focused. I think we have probably 25 technical, internal, and other staff that are attached to this fire districts and whatnot. And if you look at the bottom, these are all the different groups we're going to be meeting with anyway. So these 10, we want to keep somewhat engaged and focused. And unless you think there should be 14.
My first thought was, a lot of these people are like directly involved in planning, development issues, and I think there is significant policy questions with zoning districts and cities. I was kind of going to suggest that we have maybe 3 citizen members on here, that each one of us appoint one.
That's fine.
That was just my initial reaction. It didn't seem very balanced and diverse to me. That was just my original thought when I saw the
Yeah.
list.
And our initial conversation was to kind of go out and do a standard stakeholders group that just represents a cross-section of the community. But we get so technical in nature when you start talking about how codes relate and whatnot, and that's why we went to a technical committee, more of a technical-based committee on this. But I'm certainly open to that suggestion. I think if we can narrow this list down to 10 and add 3, that'd be fine.
I mean,
I think we
there's some
can.
duplication on here, but I don't know, my thought was that we should have us appoint some citizen members that don't have a direct connection to any of the industries that are related. That was just my original thought. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me.
Thank you.
John?
I think that's a good idea, and I'm wondering in relation to that, what is your time frame for us to kind of, if we agree to think about maybe some appointments that may come from us, would you like that within days or a week so we could get moving? And then also, I'm wondering, getting back to the diversity thing or the balanced body, we've gotten a fair amount, at least from certain circles, a fair amount of pushback regarding the oil and gas task force as far as not being balanced or being somewhat weighted in certain directions. Did you look at that in terms of these 14 folks and whether or not we might receive the same kind of criticism? And I'm saying this in a constructive and respectful way, because I mean, there are a number of environmental planners, but I don't see any, quote, environmental conservation folks that might, make sense to be on this. So I pose that question,
I think
Matt.
the difference between this committee and what we did for the oil and gas force is, the oil and gas force is pretty much the group that we're working pretty directly with, and then we're reporting out to the community. In this case, I would like to suggest that everybody on that bottom list is part of this engagement process. It's just that the 10 or 12 that we keep at the top are going to be taking feedback and giving us a little bit better direction as to, are we hitting the right groups? Are we sticking on track with what we need to do?
But I think, Commissioner Johnson's point is well taken, if I understand it correctly, that, maybe we should have an opportunity to suggest some folks. And then I think we have 4 people specifically from the Planning Commission. And I think there's some logic to having some of that expertise as part of this technical advisory group. But I think we need maybe to consider more community members that would
And the reason why I was wanting to trim the Planning Commission from 5 down to 2 is we'll meet with this advisory group, and then that evening or the next day, we'll actually be meeting with the Planning
I
Commission.
don't mind that. I think that's fine. So you want to go 3 planning commissioners maybe, or 2?
2, maybe 3.
But I don't understand, and I know you talked to me about this before, but I don't remember your explanation. But why on earth would we put a Fort Collins planner on our own advisory committee?
Lindsay X, is that who you're referring to?
She's Fort Collins staffer.
She works in their natural resources department now. She used to be a planner. She understands the environmental regulatory scheme that's out there, and just thought that she would be a
So
good
does
candidate. She seemed very level-minded and not biased in one direction or the other, and that's why I had the opportunity to consider her.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're going to, no offense, I think you're real talented. I think the world of
It's
you,
not to
Lafferty,
pull
but I don't
Fort
think they're going
Collins
to put you
in.
on they're not going to put you on their Land Use Code Revision Committee. I guarantee it.
I've been to their
Well-
meetings already.
Yeah, I bet.
Several of
Not
them.
even Leslie. They didn't even put Leslie on there.
So were you thinking one environmental advisory board member?
I think that's wise.
We could take 3 planning commissioners off, we could take 1 environmental advisory board member off, we could take 1 architect off of
Uh-huh.
5 people, so now we're down to 9.
You add your 3.
We added 3 citizen members.
And then we should take the Fort Collins person off, and we down to 8, and then we each put one on, then we'll be 11.
Well,
11.
I,
I'm open to your suggestions.
I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I'm not necessarily in favor of taking the Fort Collins planning person.
Pointer is your rep.
We don't have a Loveland person. or an
Yeah.
estimate person.
I'm South County. We don't have any representation then. We don't want Fort Collins land use down there.
That's fine. I agree. It's
Well,
all
we
up
each
here.
have an appointment. We can appoint whoever we want.
Yeah.
We each have a seat.
And if we did.
And I'm okay if you don't want that on there. I mean, there's other,
Well, I mean, I'm just one guy. I mean, yeah,
internally, when you look at,
John can convince me.
I'm
Yes.
working with Megan and Dalen and all those guys from our natural resources department, and that's probably.
Well, we should have one of them on then.
on there. And they're on our technical committee.
They'd be more familiar with county stuff, I would think.
And they're on our technical committee, so, yes.
I'm not sure why we would, I don't know that Jacob would really have that much to do with either.
And I was gonna look to him to give me some idea of somebody probably. That, or I would go over to the Chamber of Commerce and ask them to give us an idea of someone.
Nothing against him, just probably
Mhm.
has a lot of expertise. So if each of us did nominate somebody, can we do that quickly with just giving Matt 2 names? Or when we went through the appointment and application process, that created a tremendous amount of work. It was important for the oil and gas thing, but task force, but I'm not sure. I think that would delay this process pretty significantly. I would suggest we submit names within that 2 that we have.
If I had them by next week, then I could contact them, see if they're interested, and then I can have a spot sent up to you for appointment the following week.
That might give us some more geographical diversity in the county too. Probably pick someone from all over. I think that would be a viable focus.
So let me ask this quick question. If you narrowed it down to 2 planning commissioners, one of the environmental advisory boards, one of the architects, dropped Lindsay X, it's quite possible we keep the thing manageable with each making recommendation at 2 if you really wanted to.
Each making 2. Oh, that'd be great.
But I would ask that you, when you think about those people, think about it from a technical perspective, that they're coming in and we want to have them familiar with land use codes and other things, or the formulation of regulation, because otherwise we spend a lot of time educating that group to make decisions.
I think the product will be better received if there's more community members on there. Knowing that even if they don't have the technical expertise, I think that gives us more credibility with the public. I mean, I would think that's important. Because it's something they have to live with for a long time. And obviously,
And I-
land use codes can change a lot easier than the plan, but
John, if you were going to select one member of this environmental advisory board to serve, do you have a preference, or, I mean, or is it, do you want to think
Of the 2 people from,
environmental advisory? board?
actually, I
Christopher
suppose,
Wood and Michael Jones. Recognize Michael Jones's name, but I don't know either one of them.
well, Christopher Wood is a recent appointment, and he's with Platte River Power Authority, and actually, of those 2, I'd probably recommend Christopher.
Okay.
he can be the first voice and then the alternate, just like we did before.
And Michael Jones, if he can't make it, can serve as a backup and come in.
Matt, is it correct that this advisory committee is advisory in nature, and therefore wouldn't necessarily be voting on
There's no
something
voting or
like
anything
the
like that.
oil and gas task force?
Yeah, this is more meeting with them, letting them know what direction we're running, getting their feedback and input on things rather than decision-making.
So we're looking at taking 2 folks from the planning commission, removing those folks, 1 person from the environmental science and advisory board, And then it looks like if Lindsay X is going to be on there, that would have to be my appointment.
And one of these attorneys,
And one of-
Rebecca Spears or Steve Steinbecker.
Architects.
Architects,
And
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know either of
You know
them,
the
so I wouldn't have
I
an
know
opinion on
both,
that.
and they're both good. I don't know, Steinbecker did do a pretty significant commercial development in the county, that thing down in Campion,
Yeah, right at the corner of 60 and 287.
which is kind of unusual. Rebecca, as you mentioned, did a lot of work at NUSA and
Continues to
got that
represent
compliance
them.
stuff done there. So they both have actual relevant experience. Either would be great.
Yeah,
So
I've worked
I-
with both of them for years.
Yeah, they're both really good, talented, reasonable folks. So either of them would work really well,
And
I
both
think.
of them have already come in and met with our consultants
Yeah.
once, just to give an overview of things and what they thought about our current code.
In terms of geography, it feels like there are more North County people here than South County people.
Yeah.
And I think Steve has been a little bit more active in South
Loveland.
County than
He is a
Rebecca has.
he works mostly in South County, but I think he actually lives in Fort Collins.
And he did all the Hearts and Horses.
Yeah.
Who's that, Tom?
Steve Steinbecker.
So,
I think he lives in Fort
So
Collins,
he's
but he does a
probably-
lot of work in South County.
Or
That
with
is
a
a good
consideration, as far as the two people from the Ag Advisory Board, they're both North County, and they're both good people, and certainly Nancy Wallace has tons of experience in this, and well, both of them do. I wonder if a consideration should be to try to find a farming person, from the southern part of the county or somewhere.
Like, if I have two appointments, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can maybe, somebody like Dan Stroh or something, like, there's people like that down
And
there.
I've worked with Dan before.
I'd actually support Nancy's appointment. I think she's pretty balanced, and she's got a lot of, I don't know what you call it, tribal knowledge or whatever. She's been on that planning commission forever, and she might even have been on there last time we did the code. I'm not
She's
sure.
with the Open Lands Group as well.
She's also on the Open Lands Board. She's the Planning Commission's liaison to the Open Lands Board. And they're they're small farmers. So, I'd be supportive of Nancy.
How
And
many of the planning commissioners do you want to do?
I don't know.
I think two is sufficient.
I'd support Ann Best Johnson as well. She's a really knowledgeable planner. I think she's really, really,
Quick suggestion, if you go to 2, Sean Doherty's the current chair, and I don't know if you would want to have the chair represent the planning commission on this, so.
that doesn't matter to me.
Just
doesn't matter to me either.
I
Changes every year.
actually like John Barnett because I think he's got some pretty significant experience with Larimer County's code and comprehensive plan before, and probably has a lot of experience with what is worked and isn't worked, or what changes might have happened since he was here. I think he would add a lot.
Statswitz, if you don't know,
He's a
she
land
works
planner.
with Jim Birdsall's office now and does a lot of the development down around the Berthoud, South Loveland
Yeah.
area. So if you're looking for balance in that area.
Planner, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I gotta think about it. That's tough. They're all good. They're all good.
Well,
Can we narrow that down?
does this go to the planning commission before us for adoption? Does codes, or do they come directly to us? They come directly to us.
Goes to the planning
Oh,
commission
do
for a
they?
recommendation.
So they'll all be weighing in on these
At some
items
point.
at some point. It's
And
just a
they'll
matter
all
of-
be involved at the work session levels. It's just that we would have 2 people operating at the advisory.
Yeah, so I don't think it's terribly important which ones, because they're all going to be very involved.
I didn't have a pen.
You pen?
Could you send us the revised list, Matt? Or,
We don't have a revised. We
I'm
haven't
kind of
revised it
figuring
yet.
out where
I'll,
you guys are falling right now.
yeah.
But your intention is that it would not be Jacob. You would go to him and ask him.
Jacob, I'd
for
probably
some-
look for somebody either off his staff or somebody from the outside the agency.
And also, down under the other participants,
Mhm.
you've said Workforce Center and Economic Development, but you don't mean our staff department, right? Are you thinking of the Workforce Development Board?
I was just thinking we'd probably have some meetings with Jacob and his crew to understand a bigger picture of what the economic development plan that they put out a year and a half ago, how that might be, look in light of codes and regulations, and how we can better improve our processes.
Well, knowing that most of these, under other participants, are organizations outside of the county or advisory boards to the county, the parallel for this county department would be the Workforce Development Board.
Right.
So I don't know if that's something the commissioners want to consider. And I assume on the same column that you meant chambers, plural,
Mhm.
of commerce,
Yeah.
given that there are several chambers throughout the county.
I didn't really think we needed somebody from our Economic Development Office as a part of the advisory committee. That's just my opinion. To represent that point of view, somebody from a Workforce Development Board, a member of that board might be more,
And I could have
works in the
Jacob,
private sector that deals with these issues more directly, might be more.
and that would
have
be
more
to go to
offer.
Jacob and ask for that input.
Yeah.
Yeah, he staffs the
Yeah.
WIB.
I'll ask him.
Yeah, somebody like Michael Connell might be a good fit, or
Mhm.
something like that, too.
The chair guy, I can't remember his name right now, he's
Somebody that has
active or.
tried to locate or expand a business in Larimer County and had interaction with our land use codes and processes would be good.
You know, Mickey Roth. She
Yeah.
deals a lot with those,
Yeah.
that type of an issue, financing those, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good start, though.
Yeah, it's a good start.
Very
Okay.
good.
So by next week, I'll send you this
By
list.
next Monday.
I'll send you
Meeting
this
again
list
Monday, right? Does that work for everybody?
digitally, and then you guys could scribe off if you want, and I'll try to make some balance out of that.
Okay.
But if you could do that by like Friday, so I can assemble it on Monday,
Come up with two names.
and then 2 names.
And we're looking at 2 less planning commission members.
3 less.
North-south ag person.
3 less planning
Oh,
commissioners.
3 less?
Mhm.
3 less?
We said two planning commissioners.
I can cover the ag, I think I can cover the South County
Yeah.
ag person myself.
Okay.
I can figure that out. I'll get that.
That'd be great.
You're suggesting Nancy rather than Zach?
Zach's still on there. Isn't Zach, you're not recommending getting rid of Zach, are you?
No, I'm just saying, that there are 2 northern Larimer
Yeah,
County folks.
yeah.
We want to have 1 northern Larimer County and perhaps 1
I'm
southern.
fine with that. I'm fine with that recommendation.
All right, I'll send you this list. You gives me who's scratched off on your list and whatnot, and I'll put it into some sort of a spreadsheet and let you guys know, and we'll meet on it again next Monday.
Is it a concern that Ted Shepard is my neighbor? Just kidding.
No?
Yes.
I should-
Ted-
Thanks for disclosing that.
Ted, former Fort Collins planner.
Yeah.
He retired
I
and
know.
is now with the with
Partnership, yeah,
uh,
the partnership.
PAFC.
PAFC. Thank you. I can't get that on my head.
And he happens to
On the
be-
housing stuff. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to zoning. That's it. That was his specialty.
Neighbors, are not knowledgeable about his neighbors, would that he picks through, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he was
You
there
got a
first.
question is,
Maybe he was there first.
yeah. Got to question his decision-making based on his neighborhood.
Thanks for your time, John.
His neighbors, not his neighborhood.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, we're gearing up to go to Estes tonight and
Do you,
gearing up
do you have an
for-
agenda for tonight? Do you know, can you describe that
It was-
briefly?
I will
Was that in the email you sent? Because I want to print that off, and I haven't had a
Right.
chance to do that yet.
I can
Okay.
describe
It's-
it.
It's 105
Commissioner,
pages.
it's page 1 of 105.
Yes.
And it's,
Okay,
it's,
good. I'll print off page
and
one.
it's,
Most of the
Yeah.
pages are either copies of the current IGA
Yep,
or
yep.
copies of the
And we talked about the agenda last
correct.
week here. I remember
we did
that,
notice
but
it as a public, I mean, a decision-making, public meeting, although it's unlikely that we'll make any formal decision, I suppose.
Not decision, but direction.
Yeah.
We'd be looking
It might be a
for
direction
direction
meeting.
to staff.
Yeah.
There will be public testimony, so basically.
There
the
will
order-
be.
Yeah, the
Okay.
order of proceedings will be call it to order, both Mayor Jersa and yourself, Chair Donnelly, and then staff is presenting. And will give a summary of what we've heard during the community engagement piece. We'll describe the options that are in front of you. There's some other items like the resolution from the Estes Valley Planning Commission that have been inserted as part of the packet. And then any questions that you may have of staff. Then there's opportunity for public comment at that point, and then it goes back to discussion. And then
Okay.
at that point, any direction that you wish to give staff would be terrific.
so
And
what
then-
specifically is the outcome you're looking for from this meeting?
The outcome we're looking for is what direction are we going in with regard to the two options that we included in the packet. So there's an A and a B, and there could be some hybrid of that. We'd like to know if there's a preference overall on the part of each body, so the town trustees and yourselves, and are you in agreement with each other? And then if you pick one or the other path, are there any additional modifications that you'd like to see attached to either of those paths? So basically, that's what we're looking for.
And if we're not in agreement, then what happens?
Um,
What's the plan?
Well, that'll make things a little more challenging for staff, I think, but, you know, I hope that the discussion will maybe give an opportunity to finesse the things that you're not in agreement on and come up with some alternative that might work. I think, frankly, either option maybe isn't that far off from the other option, and it may be that the devil's in the detail in terms of some of the transitional pieces related to planning commissions and how we work with the code and how we plan for the joint planning area and that kind of thing. So I think I did listen to the discussion that the town trustees had last week, I believe, and they had a good discussion with each other and realized that there's a handful of things probably that need some attention, but for the most part, there's a fair amount of agreement. I think that maybe we'll find that's the case with you all also.
And what were their main sources of continued need for discussion?
I think
Can you
that-
paraphrase those?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in continuing to coordinate and collaborate and not, you know, just completely going our separate ways. That there's this definitely recognition that what we've been doing for the last 20 years was well-founded and is important. The concern is about having separate development codes, you know, not continuing to plan together on the one hand. On the other hand, I think there is a lot of interest in, you know, redefining how we work together and how we do cooperative planning and how we can coordinate. They talked a fair amount about the role that the town's been playing in doing development review, and they seem to be pretty united on the fact that that should now be happening at the county, not in the town. So, and that was something that in either option was fairly common, that, you know, they've asked us to do it, so we didn't necessarily see that there was an alternative to that, so we assume that we're doing it. So, sorry, I don't have all my notes right in front of me,
Okay.
but we can certainly
Good.
summarize that when we get there tonight. But, so I think from staff perspective, we hope that that there's some united perspective and direction that we can walk away with and know what we're doing for November. And that if there's some finessing that we need to do on either of the options, that we can work on that. You know, we know they're not probably final or perfect, but I think if you can give us direction on what you want to see, we can go finalize that.
According to the agenda that I've seen, all of the presentation is coming from the Estes Park Community Development folks. Are you not going to
No,
present it all?
You're doing the options. You're
Yes,
presenting the
I'm
options,
presenting
right?
that part. So Director Hunt is presenting some of the summary of the questionnaire results and some of the public engagement. But I will present the
Options A and B?
Correct.
And with option B, have you had a chance to look at some of the red marks that Randy Hunt has added to the proposed IGA?
Yes.
It seems most of it is grammatical or sentence structure, but there is some more substantive stuff.
Yeah, the town added.
Is A that we
So-
delay a
Yeah,
year?
kick the can.
Yeah.
Okay, and then B is,
Yeah, A is extend the current IGA,
IGA.
and B is refresh and come up with a new IGA in essence.
Okay.
And then, to your point, Commissioner Cavallis, the town, we initiated that. That was, we divvied up the roles and we said, we'll take a stab at that. So we initiated a draft and we sent it over to the town, and then the town added some items to it. And so they added, mostly the pieces that they added were relative to their work, like, you know, how they would execute their development code and that sort of thing. So they really added the pieces that were more pertinent to the town.
So it seems like one of the more significant overarching decision points tonight would be to give direction as far as going down the path of option B, for example, and then there's still a lot of details to work out if that's what we decide.
Yes, yes. So I think if you say option A, but we want you to add this thing to it, or option B, but we want you to change this thing as part of it, that would be helpful direction.
Do you have a sense that the town board knows what they want?
That's nothing my experience
Yeah.
based on our.
Or that could change the next day?
So I would say, based on the conversation they had last week, and it wasn't, they talked about a lot of different topics, but I would say the majority of them were leaning in a direction of a new, refreshed form of an IGA.
Sure.
And then some of them expressed those concerns I mentioned earlier about, not wanting to completely do away with cooperative planning and a code and that sort of thing.
And therefore not kicking the can down the road.
Right.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's just continuing what you've done. I mean,
Do you know
And
how?
I think too that, option B, it allows us to continue to carry forward some of the things I think that have been working well, and it gives us a chance to maybe refresh some of the things that probably could use a little bit of refreshing.
Yeah, well, option B could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be the difficulty of the meeting. So Mayor Jursa, do you know how he's going to structure public comment?
They will have a sign-in sheet, and then they'll just take people in order. I don't know, I haven't heard if it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, what
Okay.
have you. But they will have sign-in, and then anybody who's there who wants to comment, then he'll close comment and then have some discussion, questions for staff and discussion amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Do you
I'm
anticipate-
not real hopeful or optimistic that by the end of that meeting, we'll have clear direction on what changes we all agree on to an IGA. That's pretty complicated to do, and this is already a pretty long meeting. So,
Do we have a times that we're set to shut off the TV? I mean, do we,
I don't know. but
Okay.
We'll find out.
like Fort Collins cable access, what do we go till 10 or?
10.
Yeah.
And then they turn us off, so if we do anything that people are watching, if they're not on the internet, then they can't watch us
Do you
anymore.
Yeah, we
anticipate
do
this will
have,
go on?
we do have time scheduled at the work session with the planning commission on the 9th, that if there's a desire to have some follow-up conversation or direction to staff, that you could give, and then similarly, the town could do that, and then we could coordinate with town staff if there's some items that we should work on before November. So we may have to peel off separately and do some work, and then come back together and share, compare notes on what we've come up with for the discussion in November. But our next discussion is planned to be November 14th.
So if we do go with option B and we discuss what changes we want, I feel like that should almost be facilitated somehow, and I don't know what the mayor is planning to do, but we should go down each point individually and, shared code, who does what, and find if we can get to agreement before we move on to the next one. Otherwise, it might be a pretty unstructured, just potpourri of disparate opinions.
I
I don't
do
know.
have some slides, and the last one basically asks the question A or B, and if B, do you want to give direction on these topics?
Okay,
So
good. Maybe that can be an
if
outline.
B's amenable, we could use that as a way to structure that discussion, and that might help keep it somewhat orderly.
I'm just fearful that we'll talk for an hour and have accomplished nothing if we don't have some kind of a structure to that.
We'll talk for 3 hours and potentially accomplish nothing, even better.
You're less optimistic than I am. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Thank you for
well, I mean, we
reviewing
got to
that.
start somewhere. This is a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
start, and at least kind of introduces the issue and gives us a chance to sit down and start seeing if there. You never know. Maybe there is a great deal of common ground, a commonality, and
I'm sure there'll be some.
it'll be simple, or maybe it won't be. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, we don't know until we do it. Hold the meeting.
Okay.
Nothing's preordained, Linda.
Good to know,
That's why we
Commissioner.
have the meetings.
And you all know, I know we've said this before, but there's dinner at 5 there, and you can work out your carpooling arrangements or what have you.
And how many of you guys are going? How many people are going?
We've got a good group of us going from community development, Linda, Lori, so.
You.
Seconds of
so
us,
us.
yeah.
Yeah,
And Frank.
Frank?
Frank.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And,
Frank's
you know,
very short.
just in closing on my part, one thing I'd like to suggest, if it's not already been thought of, and that is that, not for tonight, but subsequently, creating some kind of a side-by-side document where you're comparing, the current, if we go down option B, you compare, the current IGA, the different sections, just like we do at State Board of Human Services when we're doing rulemaking, the proposed IGA, some of the proposed changes, that's something that might be visually helpful. And not to put that all on you, but hopefully, if we agree that that would be helpful, then a shared responsibility to create that document.
That's good feedback, thanks. I have some of that in the presentation for tonight, maybe not quite as,
Great.
quite as orderly as that, but there is some comparison.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right, we got to get going. We'll go up to Estes Park. See you guys tonight.
Wish we had time to go see the Aspen.